That's a good picture. Um, well, it's 9 o'clock. It's certainly 9 o'clock somewhere, and there's obviously some latency in the system. And I've just gone live. So thank you for being here if you're here, and thank you for watching on repeat if you're watching on repeat. If you like what you see, please do share with others, and make sure that we can get a bit of a nicer audience for people coming in to see this. Anyway, what's today's topic? I'll be doing these lives weekly as far as I can. Clients come first, always. Uh, but I'm going to work myself around a psychometric assessment. I use several in my work. One of them is from the company called Human Synergistics, which is a fabulous company, very supportive, and has a wonderful suite of tools to help you understand what your behavior is. Whatever you think you're doing, others may see you doing something differently. I then also use, or can use, also independently, bit of a jumbled up there, but the emotional capital report from a company called Roche Martin, which looks at the emotional intelligence of a leader, which also signifies behavioral output versus internal thinking. Then there are two solo self-assessments, one of which is the Clifton Strength Finder, which I've been a fan of since I was first certified back in 2012, which became an early adopter of the Clifton Strength Finder, called the Gallup Strength Finder in those days. And this is how you do your work, pointing out the more you do in the way that you prefer to do it, the happier you will be, the less stressed you will be, and the better your outputs. And then there's, talking of stress, the stress and well-being assessment, which is a repeatable self-assessment to help you understand where you are on the stress curve and with your resilience and well-being and how to improve. And that topic kind of comes in, but they all do, kind of comes into today's topic, which is about making decisions and seeking approval. Now, if we go around the behavioral styles from the human synergistics circumplex, seeking approval comes in at number three and is the first in the cluster of behavior styles that are termed passive. And you can imagine why. So you find it difficult to do things without seeking approval. It's one of the bizarre things in life that actually we're told and we're taught to ask first. Our parents are very kind at training us to ask first. And then at some point they say, well, you should know how to do that and get on and do it. And then we lose all confidence. I was reminded of this during a workshop a couple of weeks ago. And in a room full of 12 very senior leaders, about four of them found it's kind of bizarre, but four of them found it, they were high in approval seeking. They were high in um, checking with others that what they were doing was the right thing. Now, there's a way of doing that, which is um, a considerate way, which is collaboratively, and which is seen as helping the other people in your team take part in the topic. But then there's a way of doing it where you just look as though you can't take a decision. And if we think about how we were brought up, and I posed this in the room and suggested that those people that find it difficult to take a decision were, as they were brought up by the people that loved them, cared for them, and were doing the best they could with within the environment that they were in, and with all their values and beliefs piling in on top. Um, Despite all that, they were criticizing the child rather too much. They were picking on them perhaps and saying this isn't good enough, or overly critical parents can inadvertently bring up children who turn into adults that can't take a decision. The other alternative to that is, broadly speaking, that the parents make all the decisions for them, and the child never has the practice of making a decision. And as a parent, it's very easy because you want things to move along. You want children to get ready for school. You want to abdicate any difficulties and navigate the morning routine as smoothly as possible. But sometimes it's simple, inconsequential to you decisions that can help foster a healthy decision making culture in the adult that you're bringing up. For example, um, do you want this breakfast or that breakfast? You know, it's a binary, it's a double bind. They're going to have one of those, but which one of them to you is inconsequential? To them, they've made a decision. Do you want these shoes or those shoes, that coat or that coat? You know, whichever one it is. Even bedtime can become a lovely source of, okay, it's bedtime. Oh, I don't want to go to bed. Well, you can go to bed now or in 10 minutes' time. Well, the child's always going to say 10 minutes' time, but to you, they're still going to bed. They think they've made a choice. Depending on the age you introduce this to, they may be smart enough to realize, see what's going on here, and get wise to it. But used wisely, the double bind is a useful thing. And with children in particular, it's a very, very easy way of helping children decide. And through that, you have children that can grow up into adults that can take a decision. I was reminded also in the workshop of the apocryphal tale of the CEO of a large company who was retiring. Now, this CEO had a fantastic uh, reputation because he'd taken the company from pretty much not a lot to something that was rather expensive and valued highly on the stock market. And the employees were doing rather well, the company was doing rather well, and the future looked bright. But one of the key traits that this leader had in his favor was that he had a legend built around him that he could take great decisions. So when the leaving party happened, excuse me, when the leaving party happened and the incoming CEO was there, someone they'd chosen, someone that they groomed to be the right person to take over from this guy, the CEO took him to one side and said, now is the time. And the incoming CEO thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to get to hear how to take great decisions. It's the very thing that I'm really struggling with. And the outgoing guy said, I'm going to tell you the secret of taking great decisions. And so he did. And it was this: in life, there are choices to be made. And sometimes the choice is clear. You either go to the left path where there's problems and trees are falling down and blockages and all sorts of things in the way, or you take the right path. And the right path is the one that leads you to success. And these choices are quite clear. We're A or B. It doesn't matter which way around it is, but one of them will present itself to you very, very clearly. And the other one will, you go, no, we just don't want to do that. And everyone's in agreement and off you go. But sometimes life throws up a challenge that is not so clear. And in those challenges and in those decisions you have to make that are less clear, then he had a secret. And he said, in his pocket, he always carries a little bit of loose change. And he put his hand in his pocket and he just grab a cluster of coins and silently in his pocket would flick them and count as he was going. Now, if the number of coins that he picked up happened to be an odd number, he'd choose choice A. If it was an even number, he'd choose choice B. And the guy's incoming CEO thought, well, this is crazy. How can this be that it just comes down to chance and some coins? And he said, no, you don't really understand. Making a decision is the best thing you can do. If it's not the right decision, then we adjust it along the way and we end up with the right decision. But not making a decision just leads to stagnation. It leads to nothing moving and time wasted. And I think you'll agree that there are many things in life that we can look at and think, should I do A or B? Now, things can get more complicated than that, but big decisions tend to be those decisions that we spend a lot of time on by definition. Actually, a decision is a choice, and you can take a choice quickly, or you can take a choice over many, many days, sometimes weeks, or as I've seen in some of my clients who are going for jobs and being recruited, months. and then the decision doesn't go their way. What a waste of time. So do yourself a favor and take a decision, knowing that if it happens to be the wrong one, with all your intuitive guidance, then you can make adjustments. Now, there are some tricks and tools and things about taking decisions that we can look into. I posted something the other day from René Descartes, the French philosopher who was immortalized in the Monty Python song. Instead of "I think, therefore I am," they gave him the quote, "I drink, therefore I am." Now, I'm not suggesting you go and have a drink to make a decision, but here are 4 questions that you could ask yourself to help you make that decision. And they're called Cartesian logic, because you look at everything from 4 ways. It's a lovely model to put up in a corporate training room because it neatly fits into a 2x2 grid. And corporate trainers love a 2x2 grid. So here's what you put in them. 1, you take a decision based on what would happen if I did this. And then the inverse of that would be what would happen if I didn't do this? So that's fairly easy. Now I've got a choice. What would happen if I bought bananas? What would happen if I didn't buy bananas? What would happen if I gave John the job? What would happen if I didn't give John the job? What would happen if I moved into a job and accepted terms and conditions? What would happen if I didn't? But then you can go a little bit further. You can have the converse of that. What would happen if, well, sorry, this is why it's worth writing it down. What wouldn't happen or won't happen if you did this? So if you have a job that you're going for, what would happen if I take it? What would happen if I don't take it? What won't happen if you took it? So you're clearly moving out of something into something else. So you're leaving something behind. So what won't get done if you take that job? What can you hand over to other people and so on? And what's important in that? And then a complete non-mirror image reverse of all of that is what won't happen if you didn't. Now, these sort of questions really, really are worth writing down. And they're on the LinkedIn post, so you can copy them down. But just work it through. Just work it through to actually see where you can influence and where you can't influence. And through that Cartesian logic will come the pearl of wisdom that you're looking for in trying to make the decision. Now, I mentioned that the passive behavior of uh, the leadership work style. Sorry, I lost my words there. That's very bad. So seeking approval from others. Passive behavior in a leadership context isn't necessarily seen as a good thing. I did a poll a couple of weeks ago, and everybody wanted a leader that was encouraging and connecting, but looking out for them. They also like leaders who protect them from high above and the stuff that comes down that's irrelevant, so reducing the noise in the workplace. But they also like leaders who can take a decision. People like to follow someone who can be seen as decisive. And this business of approval could work in your favor if you did it correctly. But if you're someone who constantly asks other people, "What do you think? Is it this or is it that? Well, should I do that? Should I have the chicken or the beef?" Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? You're on an aeroplane and the stewardess comes up, chicken or beef, and you've got to make a choice there and then. There's no, "Oh, let me think about it." So sometimes you can do it. Sometimes you can actually make a decision really, really quickly. But these passive behaviors are characterized by a tendency to truly avoid confrontation. What's behind the approval piece is keeping the peace, seeking harmony, and prioritizing an agreement over open discussion. There's lots to learn in open discussion. And it's very, very difficult to take a serious decision with very little information. And often in times where money is involved, particularly buying a house or a car and thing. You want to make sure you're making the best decision for the amount of money you're putting into the house, car, or the project. Projects have budgets. Budgets need to be spent wisely. So this is where it comes a little bit stagnation. So prioritize um, the open discussion. Get everybody's input. I'm reminded of a leader I had, well, manager really. She was good, but one of the things that really has stuck in my mind since those days, long, long time ago, was that she was new into the team that she was leading, and we had clients out in the big wide world, and she would come and sit with us and go through the sales discussions that we were doing. Great. Uh, One thing she kept saying over and over again was um, information. I need information. I can't take any decisions without information. And she wasn't prepared to, and hats off to her, she wasn't prepared to do anything without making sure she had all the information at her side to make the best decision possible. I'm not saying the right one, the best one. Um, the approval side, as a subset of passive behavior, uh, is that these people who seek approval all the time are inclined to seek validation and positive feedback from others. So they kind of need to make themselves feel good about what they're doing. Seeking approval is a natural instinct in human. Don't get me wrong. We all like to fit in. We all like to be part of that tribe. And often, if we take a decision that is really harsh on other people, sometimes very difficult decisions have to be made in business. Sometimes, and I'm saying it rather too frequently, is that decisions seem to be just made because without consideration for the human impact. Um, but in leadership, it can have a positive and negative implications. So, on the positive side, leaders who value feedback, for example, and seek approval can foster a much more supportive and collaborative work environment. So, but that's that human contact I mentioned earlier. That's that piece where inclusivity from the leader just generates a much more supportive, collaborative work environment, and throughout the team generates a more trustful environment if you foster it correctly. Seeking input from the team members can actually lead to better decision making. Now, that's more inclusive. That's not saying, am I right? That's saying, give me what you know. Help me get all that information that my early manager was getting, and so on. Leaders who constantly seek approval, though, might avoid making tough decisions that could be unpopular. So it's the age-old question: is my purpose as a leader to be liked? Not really. Your purpose as a leader is to lead. Your purpose as a leader is to bring your team on. And if things are tough, then you explain why they are tough. If things are difficult, you explain what the difficulties are. Downside of excessive approval-seeking behavior can hinder innovation and growth. Um, it, it, it could discourage risk-taking, and it could discourage honest feedback. Feedback's another topic. We'll cover that. Don't worry. But leaders who are in this area really need to look at how they get their information and what they do, and the inclusivity of it all. Now, leaders' approval behavior can also impact the dynamic of a team. So if you're a leader, or if your leader is constantly seeking approval, there's a potential for team members to withhold different opinions. They tend not to want to speak up. There's concerns that the team then may displease the leader, which could lead to a lack of diverse perspectives and hinder what an awful lot of I hear in the workplace these days is the creativity, the space. I'm helping a team transform. We're going through the transformation process, and they're doing the right thing by seeking information from every member of the leadership team and from those teams to come in and say, just asking that question, if you were new, why do you do this? Why do you do it this way? Did you know there's another way? And to my shock and horror, I shan't name them. There are some what I would call standard operating procedures that I've seen in other organizations that are just not present in this highly regulated industry. Uh, they're putting that right, which is a good thing. But we need leaders in that space to recognize they don't hold all the answers and are asking the question, tell me, tell me, tell me, which is exactly what's happening. Um, so, self awareness is a key thing. Self awareness is, and self knowing in particular, is one of those emotional intelligence skills that, frankly, a lot of leaders need to practice more. And self awareness is one of those things that are going to help you take great decisions. Um, let's have a look. Self awareness is understanding the emotional state. I'm sorry to use the word emotion, the emotional state that you are in. So, how are you, dare I say it, feeling? A lot of people still struggle with this and seem to operate outside of themselves in a dissociated state, which means you're kind of observing your life through the lens of the film camera, not rather than through your own eyes and seeing what's right in front of you. And through that, missing a fair number of opportunities, I would argue, but also um, missing the emotional state you're in. Now, we can only be at our best if we operate in the best emotional state for us. We can only access all our wonderful inner resources, of which you have more than you ever know, to be at your best if we know what state we're in. Because everything comes from the emotion. The emotion affects your physiology affects your feelings. Emotion and physiology, I'm not going to be definitive on this because there is, I think, still some argument we still don't fully know. Some people say your physiology affects your emotions. Other people say it all starts with the emotion. Um, but I think there's a tussle. One can influence the other. You can pull yourself in a down and then you feel gloomy. You can lift yourself up and high and you will feel better. There's a lovely Schultz Peanuts cartoon on that. But either way, those two things in combination manifest themselves in your body as a feeling. So the feeling isn't the emotion. The emotion is manifested through all the information that all your senses are gathering to produce what you sense, what you recognize inside as a feeling. And your feeling influences your thoughts, and your thoughts come out as behavior. Well, if your emotional state isn't great, your behavior isn't going to be your best behavior, bottom line. So you can affect this and take some control over it through your self awareness by recognizing the emotional state you're in. If you're coming up to taking a decision, there's something to have a look at. Recognize how you feel before you take any decision. I think I don't know who said it, but I do believe it's true. Never take a decision when you're either end of that happy spectrum, when you're feeling really sad, because I mean, who hasn't regretted taking a decision just after their now ex-partner has done something that really hurt them or the relationship, and it's ended up in a breakup, a divorce, whatever it is. And people quite often go off and do reckless things after something like that because they're not in the best state possible to take the best decision. Similarly, if you're super happy, many people do and buy and get involved in all sorts of things when they're on a holiday because they're kind of relaxed. They've got the holiday brain in and they haven't got their rational thinking brain in. So at either end of that happy spectrum, not a good place to take a decision of any sort. So somewhere in the middle. So how do you get there? Well, just breathe. Just breathe down. First of all, recognize what emotional state am I in? What do I feel? Where do I feel it? What's brought that on? And often, if you're taking a decision, there's a fear of failure. Well, not actually the fear of failure, the fear of the consequences of the failure. So we all fail many times. It's not the failure that we're worried about, it's the aftermath of the failure. So what would happen if? Go back to the Cartesian logic. What would happen if? What would happen if not? All of that. And look at those answers to your questions and ask you, what are you really frightened of? And what can you get over it? But if you get that fear, that anxiety, and you recognize it, then stop. Breathe low and slow into the belly. If you don't know how to do that, ask someone who sings or plays a wind instrument and exercise your diaphragm to breathe down. So you breathe low and slower than normal and just bring your heart rate down. Now, there's more to this technique than that. But if you just do that first step, you'll be in a much better place to take a proper decision and avoid the need for asking for approval. Have confidence in yourself. You have all the answers you need, and I know you can do it. So it's important to have a balanced approval of behavior for effective leadership, but really in a leadership position, taking decisions with information, but not necessarily with approval, is a much stronger place to be. Those of you who stayed to the end, thank you very much. Really do appreciate it. If you liked it, please like the recording. If you found something useful in it, please make a comment. And if you think others would like it too, please share it. I'll be back next week for another topic, and you can see where that goes on Monday. But I'll be setting this up, and we'll do another LinkedIn Live next Wednesday. Thanks for joining me, and hope to see you then. Bye now.